So here we all are, and we will sort it all out this morning. Totally, no we won't at all. But hopefully we can just have some nice, easy conversation, a bit of banter about it. I'm just going to say up front, one of the reasons we're here at Hat Fair first and foremost is that Hat Fair really broke our hearts in the sector that Hat Fair lost its MPO status. Not just because of what that obviously meant in terms of Andrew and Derek having to work like Trojans, I assume, to get this on. But also what that says symbolically for a sector that is very dear to mine and I'm sure everybody's hearts. And you know, and Andrew, you know, I spoke quite robustly at the conference to that end, because that was a very difficult thing for us to hear as a sector. Also, there were some companies that we have worked with long and hard who lost their status, and more significantly, and more hidden, quite a lot of companies that I knew because I'd supported them who had applied to become part of the portfolio and who sadly didn't get that status, having done many, many years of hard work. So there's that kind of rockiness going on. There were also all those questions around the government intervention and Nadine Dorries coming in and losing that arm's length status in terms of the Arts Council. So in my head, it was like, can we just put that out of our heads a bit and just start thinking a little bit more strategically? So we applied to Arts Fundraising and Philanthropy for a bit of funding to support us for this, which they very kindly gave us and gave us some connections, one of which is Lottie, for 4 of these events, and we're going to Bradford as well, we're going to Greenwich and Docklands, and we're going to Hull for the Freedom Festival. So we're kind of spreading it about a bit and just seeing what comes up in the room. But actually quite handily, we have Ralph, who's the recently appointed Director of Without Walls, which is a very important part of the funding strategy across the UK. And again, you know, there are questions around that in terms of your relationship with the Arts Council and what Arts Council say about funding there. But thinking more strategically, we have Sarah from the Winchester Bid, which is great for us to hear about your relationship. And we have artists in the room, and I saw you come in with a bucket. I just thought that's really interesting because, of course, that's the most basic level of fundraising. So it's absolutely brilliant you're here with that. We'll have some words from Andrew, just talking about you know, in the context of funding. But if you want to talk about programming and internationalism, that would be great too. And then we'll hear from Sarah, if we may, about the range of the bid with Hat Fair and what it means to you. And if you want to talk a little bit about, you know, how that relationship works in terms of business, that would be great. And then Lottie, you're going to hear come and disrupt us all. That is what you promised me. I know what it's great. But I mean, I think again that whole notion, we've mentioned this before, Hat Fair has this extraordinary mix of proper hatting, busking, alongside things like Without Walls programme, which is sort of some of the best funded work. And it's unique in that sense, hence more about Heartbreak. That it really demonstrates the history of the sector. We're looking at a picture and we know you're 50 next year, not you, but far in there, but the festival.
Sadly, I'm older.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that people don't know about Hat Fair, so forgive me if this is already known to some of you. So Hat Fair is, certainly when I came on board, it was touted as the longest running outdoor arts festival in the UK. I'm always a little bit wary about saying that because you know how you judge that, but certainly it is one of the longest running outdoor arts festivals in the UK. It's 50 years old next year. Technically, I believe it actually started in 1973 in Covent Garden. There was a Hat Fair, and then it came to Winchester. Jonathan Kay was the founding director. And interestingly, I was talking literally 2 days ago to Jonathan Kay, who I'm inviting back for our 50th birthday next year to do an event. And one of the first things Derek and I did was meet Jonathan, and he took us on a walk around the city. Because I'm a great believer that when you run something like this, you're the temporary caretaker. Okay, it's not my project, it's not my festival, it's your festival, it's the public's festival, it's the city's festival, it's the sector's festival. You're our caretaker. And so very much I wanted to talk to the person who started it, you know, and find out where he was coming from back in the day. And it's interesting, we've been using the word disruptor, and absolutely that's where Jonathan is coming from. You know, we are in Winchester, which is the ancient capital of England, and it's a place of cathedral and the military, and you know the great big traditions, etc. And what Hat Fair does is it brings joy and disruption to the city of Winchester once a year. But actually, I'd like to think that work feeds into our work with communities throughout the year. So there's a very particular mix of work at Hat Fair. It's called Hat Fair because it started as a street busking festival collecting money in the hat. And we still have that tradition to this day as part of the festival. And because we're talking about finances with the hatters, we pay their travel, we pay their accommodation, they get fed, etc. But they still, to this day, collect money in the hat. We do, however, the reality, also pay them a bit of a fee now, because the Friday, for example, is not busy enough for them to earn enough money in the hat. Today it'll be great, it'll be packed in the street. So there's a myth out there that, oh, it costs nothing to bring hatters to the festival. No, that's rubbish. It absolutely does cost, and it's because we want to look after them like every other artist. Then we also have our partnership as part of the artistic directorship with Without Walls, which is critically important to us. Through Without Walls, we're able to punch above our weight in terms of co-commissioning work. So we're able to bring work here that in no way, shape or form would we be able to commission ourselves. And the real focus with Without Walls is around diversification of artists and private innovation, and encouraging new voices, I suppose, and new ways of working to the table. And that can be a hit and miss process as well, because it is new commissioned work, and that the risk is we're commissioning work on the basis of faith and a promise, and you see it for the first time when it comes out of the box, and some of it soars and flies, and some of it, okay, that's not quite. It's still finding its feet. It's going to take a journey over the summer, but that's the risk we take with new work. We also find ways of funding completely new commissions that are working with our communities, and Lorna is an example of that. And that was through the
Shared Prosperity
Fund, yes.
Which was actually designed for a different purpose, our little chunk of it in Winchester, but with the trauma that we had around funding Hat Fair, I persuaded the City Council to divert that little bit of money from what we were going to do with it to supporting Hat Fair and specifically working communities.
Yeah. So over this year and next year, that money is going into supporting work with communities, which will result in major work at the festival. So we've commissioned Lorna Gobbledygook to work with young people and older people across Winchester District, which will end up being the High Priestess of Pop and the Disco Druids this evening, which is our big sort of party show. So that's. So we're always trying to be inventive in terms of how we can make projects happen. So we have our national commitments, we make projects that are bespoke, we bring in hatters, which are national and international. We also work very closely with cultural institutes, so Hands Down Circus have been supported by Culture Ireland. And I think one of the things that gets underestimated as a festival director, people always ask, what are you going to do after the festival, as if it's just 3 days and you do nothing the rest of the year. But actually, it's all about building relations. It's entirely about building relations. So I put a lot of time and a lot of effort into meeting people, developing those relationships, be it with Culture Ireland, the Finnish Institute, Catalan Arts, so that you build those relationships to the point where there is complete trust. Okay, so they know I'm going to deliver. Culture Ireland knows I'm going to deliver if I say I'm going to deliver. But that takes time, and Kirsty knows exactly what that's like. Building those relationships, it's time heavy, but once you've earned trust, it really pays off. My God, it pays off. I've got, for next year in terms of Culture Ireland, I've got a very big project planned, and I know they're going to give us funding.
They're also long-term, those things. You kind of start, it's 3-4 years later is actually when it realises itself even into one.
Exactly, and and also the payback as well is those institutes now pay for me to go to festivals, so I can see the work. So you guys at Spree, for example, or the Finnish Institute paying for me to go to Helsinki. But they know I'm going to pay back, and I'm going to bring those artists here. So it's a kind of complex network. And then again, thinking about how we. The makeup of this festival, we've got a big commitment to local talent, which Fee has curated this year. So we throw open the doors, but it is curated. But it's about that tricky balancing act. I mean, there was a tradition, we talked a bit about this earlier informally, back in the day, people could rock up and perform at Hat Fair, and still I get requests like 2 weeks before, oh, can I just rock up, and well, sadly don't. But we're trying to keep the doors open through an open call every year, but it is curated. And what I'm delighted to see emerge in recent years is that local talent programme being really diverse and international, local international. And we've had, particularly in the territory of refugees and asylum seekers and people who have been displaced for whatever reason, coming here and having a voice in Winchester City of Sanctuary, which we're really, really proud of, having that safe space. So it's a festival, it's very eclectic, but I think it has a big heart. It has a massive heart. And within the programme, we're very keen to have work that is about joy, unashamedly about joy. And we were saying this last night, wouldn't it be wonderful if, Arts Council had criteria about joy and entertainment? Wouldn't that be lovely?
Raising the soul, which is what we do all the time.
We're about joy, we're about entertainment, and yes, we are a little bit about disruption as well. So cheek by jowl, you'll have something that is entertaining, but then you'll have something that is maybe subtly politically subversive and poking the audience a little bit, particularly in a city like Winchester. And one of the things I was enjoying yesterday, I know, yes, I put programs together, but what I was enjoying myself yesterday was, walking from corner to corner, is the cumulative effect, and a lot of thought goes into this, the cumulative effect of different voices, diversity. You couldn't miss it yesterday, I feel. And I think that's a really important statement to be putting on our streets. And for me, I've been in this industry indoors and outdoors and all over the place, almost 30 years. And the reason I make theatre, the reason I do outdoor arts or indoor theatre or any form of performance is it's what I can do, it's what I can do in this world to try and do something constructive. Simple as that. I'm no good at anything else. I can't make furniture or anything like that. But this is what I can do. I get very frustrated with politics and Brexit and with so many things, but this is what I can do and create thousands and thousands and thousands of opportunities for young people, for communities, for artists to try and do some good and create a dialogue. So that's where I'm coming from as a theatre maker. That's why I run Hat Fair. I think that's the ethos applied to the crowd as well. And there's a myth that Winchester is rich, that it's awash with cash. I've lived and worked in many parts of the UK. I was in Doncaster just before here, and Doncaster is almost the opposite in terms of the perceptions. And I can say for a fact there is money in Doncaster in a way that there isn't money in Winchester in the public realm. Okay, I can see it as an outdoor artsman. I look at the detail of the public realm. You go to Doncaster and there's been investment in, new town squares and the sector and resource. There isn't that happening here. Everything's delayed. And so it's harder, it is harder to raise funding for somewhere like Winchester than it is for somewhere like Doncaster.
Great, that's on the table. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. I think that's really nice to hear about your personal mission within that, because that is the context that we always need. That's brilliant. To our newcomers, welcome. This is Dead Informal. We're talking about money. Simple as that. We did all introduce ourselves. We just say who you are very briefly.
I'm Angelika Moisel. I'm from Finland. We've organised the festival for 23 years, gave it to another city, and now we are planning a new one.
Lovely.
And thinking of a street theatre festival. So that's why I'm here.
Welcome.
I'm Liam Giffords. I used to work for Back to the Crowd. I'm now freelance and stuff.
Lovely. When you've come back, that's great.
I'm Anna O'Brien. I'm a volunteer with local charity Winchester Radio. We're the community radio station.
Yep.
And we've been covering Hat Fair for as long as I can remember. And I've been involved 25 years, so we love it.
Great. Brilliant. Lovely. Now we're going to hear from Sarah and talk about Winchester Bid. Could you just say what a bid is, just so that we're not anachronism hell?
So, bids are, by definition, business improvement districts. They started a long, long time ago overseas, and the first one in this country was in Kingston, where a group of businesses came together and said, we're not getting what we want from the council. Councils are pulling a lot of things except what's statutory. And so as businesses, why don't we all club together and actually deliver on behalf of the businesses what businesses want? That's how it all started. Winchester started 16 years ago, so we're one of the oldest in this country. We should know what we're doing by now. We do. It's all about the word additionality. It is a real word, all right? I still get people saying that's just a made-up word, so you've just made that up. It's really not. It's all about additionality, so it's not about doing children's services, highways, potholes. Let the councils do all that. It's about making a city, a place, beautiful. It's about the appearance, it's about safety, it's about making, and you, if you're not from Winchester, if you're out there today, you will see what we do. It's about making it a place that people want to come. So, what do? We are funded by a levy on businesses' business rates. So what we've done is we've drawn a line literally around the city and said, if you're a business in this area, you by law now have to pay 1.25% of your business rates to us. That seems a bit harsh, but this is the way it works. All of those businesses do, and that gives us about 550,000 a year. It's not a huge amount. There are 2.5 of us who do this job. It's a small thing, but that 550,000 a year is guaranteed to be put back in the city centre. And what we do is we break down a budget over every year, and we break down over a 5-year plan that says we will make the place safe. So we put rangers out on the streets. We will make the place attractive. So you will see hanging baskets, clean streets, no graffiti. Anybody finds any graffiti, you let me know. No graffiti. It's a personal mission. We will make it attractive, we will make it safe. We will put on events. Hello, right, we don't have the tourism remit. The council have the tourism remit, as I suspect they possibly do in Cambridge. We don't have the tourism remit, but we're really conscious that if we're not making it safe, attractive, nice to, accessible, nobody's going to come. So we don't have the tourism remit, but we work really closely on that. And we're great believers in events. So we do 4 huge events, except this one, each year. Christmas light switch on. We will still have a Christmas light switch on here. Many cities are pulling out Christmas light switch ons now. We will still do it. Christmas in Winchester is what we do. If you've not been for Christmas in Winchester, please come for Christmas in Winchester. We do Fashion Week. Fashion Week is literally what it says on the tin, a week-long celebration of all those retailers going on out there. Today we launch Independence Month. So we've got over 250 independent businesses, not necessarily on the high street, because our high street is quite expensive, but on the off streets, 250 independent businesses, all of whom make Winchester, Winchester. If you walk from top to bottom, you will see that the only businesses I have that aren't businesses, the only empty units I've got, Debenham C&H Fabrics, TSB. I've got 3, I think I might have 4. So we work really hard to make the city an attractive place, not just for visitors, not just for people who work here, but for businesses that want to come here. Now on the festival side of things, we know about events. We understand that if people come to events, A, they will spend money, and B, they will come back and spend more money. There's kind of something nice about that. So as a city, we have about 60 festivals a year. Hat Fair being the biggest, let's be quite honest. But if you can put the word festival after it, we'll have it. I promise you. Cheese and chili, sausage and cider, Prosecco, gin. There's a lot of There's a Children of Winchester festival, lovingly called Cowfest. We will literally take anything and put the word festival after it. And that's great because, again, that gives people a purpose to come. It gives people a reason to come. It gives us something to be talking about constantly. But as the bid, what do? So we chair the festivals group. We bring those festival directors and organisers together 4 times a year so they realise they're not on their own. So they realise they're not sat there going, I don't know where I'm going to get help from, I don't know where I'm going to get volunteers from, I don't know where to take this. They come and they share, which is great. We have a pot of money from that 550,000 that we get each year that we put to one side and say to festivals, you can bid for this. It's guaranteed Hat Fair will get it every year because we love Hat Fair passionately and we realise the benefits to the city. But you can bid for this pot of money. Now that could just be because they want to have a banner across the high street and they can't afford 193 quid. Mm-hmm. But it could be that they need something that's either pump priming or match funding that just gives them the leg up. So this year, the Winchester Books Festival started. It's been phenomenal, it's been great, but they couldn't afford a website. Relationship with Play to the Crowd, not just as big numbers, but intrinsically as partners, is that we, my colleague Paul is on the board of Play to the Crowd, I volunteer at the theatre, we get very involved in everything that's going on because we like that. But also we will link up businesses so that when Andrew says, you know what I really want to do is put a fisherman on the top of Marks and Spencer's, it happened, we can link up Andrew and Derek and Kirsty and Fee with those businesses and say you should be part of this. When Andrew comes and says, how do we get the independents involved? Well, let's have a Jane Austen trail around the independents as part of the weekend, you know. So we're kind of a connector, as well as a funder, as well as a passion piece for us. And every bid should be doing this. Let's be quite honest, every bid should be supporting creative, supporting cultural, supporting the arts, supporting the whole idea of benefit of festivals and events. And that's what we truly believe. And that's why we're here today. We don't put a huge amount in, nobody's got a huge amount of money anymore, but if we can introduce Andrew to Paris Smith, and they say we can put a huge amount in, then our work is done. So we can be that introducer. We've got 711 businesses in our patch, and they are all using the word collaboration at the moment.
Right.
It's a real key word now. So it's, yeah, let's make partnerships, let's make friends. We're a small city, as Andrew said. We are literally a 15-minute city top to bottom, but there's a lot smushed into that city, and it's very much like a small village, as you'll see when you get out.
What's the buy-in like with the businesses for, I mean, say specifically the Hat Fair, but for the whole of your festival, massive festival programme?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Sometimes they'll act surprised that there's stuff going on. So the Christmas light switch on is on the same day every single year. But I will still get businesses going, what's going on here then? Oh, I'm going to close at 5. No, you're not going to close at 5 because your audience is coming at 5. It's different with different things. As in any scenario, you'll get big businesses. I've got people like Primark and the Ivy here who will come to us and say, how can we get involved in Hat Fair? The Ivy are doing Hat Fair cocktails this weekend. This is a national brand that's getting involved, and you look on their website, they have got the Hat Fair cocktails for Winchester this weekend. So it varies, but if we go out and ask 9 times out of 10, people will say, is it free? Mm-hmm. And if it's free and they'll get some publicity out of it, they'll join in.
And do you get statistics on increase in revenue or any possible decrease in revenue? I mean, do you look to that?
A lot of it's anecdotal.
Yeah. So
a lot of businesses will tell us, we had a great weekend that weekend. It's not a scientific process at all. Because a lot of them can't tell you. If they're a national chain, they probably aren't allowed to tell me, yeah, they've had a record-breaking weekend. Or they don't want to tell you.
No, sure.
But from an economic point of view, we have no doubt about the amount of people who are coming to the city, boosting the local economy. That goes without saying, and that's why I've got a high street that's full of shops.
Because we've got artists in the room. If an artist comes to you and says, outside of a festival, I've got an idea that might animate this, or that, you know, would you be receptive to that? Or would you say, actually, no, I need you to be part of a festival programme or go through another organisation?
I talk to anybody and everybody, and I will always say yes, and then we'll work out how.
Yeah. Do you feel that's common with bids? They often feel they're quite hard to negotiate.
Yeah.
You're being very open about your process, which is lovely, and which that more would like that.
No, we definitely say yes and then work it backwards, because we don't know what we're missing if we don't say yes, is my approach. And we don't know what we're turning away if we don't say yes. I don't know about other bids. There are some. Uxbridge is an amazing bid, and it's literally the flight path of Heathrow, so why would anybody go Uxbridge? But they have an amazing events programme because they have somebody who, like us, says yes.
Yeah.
If you've got somebody who says yes, great. If you've got somebody running a bid, and there are some 52% of bids are run by one person. Mm-hmm. So if you're in that situation, they're probably only getting 100 grand in a year, and they've got to do hang basket, street cleaning, rangers, you know, so they may not be as responsive. Yeah. But only because they can't financially.
As an artist, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, you go first, yeah.
I was going to say, as an artist, this kind of funding option seems very far away from where I can grab. Like as a solo performer or a freelancer, not working in a big organisation, having small ideas, this feels like for me, I couldn't come to you because it's not big enough for it to be.
But I think we're hearing that maybe you should.
But yeah.
I mean, that's the question, isn't it?
Nice,
That's
and,
really.
and it's about knowledge. If you don't know there's a bid, you don't know that you could go and talk to them about
Yeah,
funding.
that's exactly
You
it,
know,
yeah.
you
Perhaps
don't-
Lorna, you'll talk about it later. You've done some bid stuff recently.
Yeah, I was sharing, wasn't I?
But no, Jason, if you're going somewhere and there's a bid and you can sell it on, I'm going to bring economic benefit. I'm going to bring something that will benefit your city, your area, your patch. Why would they turn you down?
It's a hard thing because we meet the organisations in the arts, but you kind of are the middleman between the arts and the city, you know.
Yeah.
And so we don't often get to meet you guys.
That's what we have.
I
Exactly.
think
It's
so.
not
Yeah. I think the only danger can come though is with working with a bid is about what the work itself might be in artistic freedom and what you're allowed to say in a maybe commercial context.
Yeah.
So is that in some way, obviously it's all about appropriateness, it might you end up, might it compromise you because a business doesn't like the sound of that, or a church, or I don't know, whatever it is.
And there are criteria. Let's be quite honest. You submit to us for a funding application, and there's something on there that says there's going to be no nudity. There's going to be no, there's a list. Of course there is, because it's not just your brand, it's our brand as well. We're putting our name to it. We want to put our logo above the high street and say we're supporting this.
Yeah.
But it's got to be appropriate. Let's use that word.
And I wonder also with bigger festivals, like putting on work, like there's work that actually, I remember seeing Cannibal Circus here a few years ago, and I think it was, or maybe a decade ago, I don't know if anyone saw that, just me. It was quite a lot of flesh eating, and it was, I think, a Spanish company, and there was a point where the festival director held my hand and said, "What have I done?" And I did think, goodness, this is a risky show to put on, especially now in a context where we are being encouraged to work with not just Arts Council and public funding to kind of push what our artistic boundaries are, but also with more business partners. And I think that's where stuff can start to feel a bit corporate when you're an artist.
Yeah.
And I think that's a healthy discussion that has to start at the beginning. Derek, and then we're going to hear to Lottie.
Just very briefly, two things. One, what Sarah didn't say, she said everyone by law in the business improvement district has to pay 1.25%, but every 5 years they get the opportunity to vote as to whether this should continue. So the bids have to be answerable and they have to put a prospectus. Is that right, isn't it?
Absolutely. We build a business plan for 5 years.
So only in that 5 years it's a legal requirement, then they have to ask the question.
Then we have to go back up to the businesses again and say, right, okay, do you want us to do this for another 5 years? What do you want us to do that's different? In that 5 years, everything that's in that business plan we have to by law deliver, unless there's a COVID situation going on, don't go there. But we have to deliver.
Dynamic response.
And then we go back out and say, right, will you have us for another 5 years? Which is why, come April this year, we got voted in for our 4th term.
Right. And the second thing I just want to say very briefly from the play to the crowd perspective, when the Arts Council news broke that we were no longer going to be in the NPO, very quickly the chair of the bid, who is a partner in one of the big law firms, approached us and said, what can we do? Which tells you something about where we are with the relationship in the city. And I have sat down with Hugh, the chair of our bid, and I've said, well, we are now 150 grand a year short. Can the business community fill the gap? And he went, bloody hell. Let me go away and think about it. He has not come back since.
I've not seen him in a long time.
He's probably somewhere in a bunker trying to think, what the fuck am I going to say? But he didn't say no.
Sure.
And I said, look, there are 711 businesses. Yes, many of them are micro businesses and tiny. But if you approach it from a crowdfunding perspective, anything is possible. And what I just wanted to put that out there, because what's really positive about that is that in that sense that you don't get a slammed door, you get a let's see what we can do, and there's a real sense of partnership and a real clarity that Hat Fair is vital to the distinctiveness of the place. So that gives us hope.
Hope, we like hope.
Yeah.
Lottie, can I turn to you for some more hope?
I'm about to blow up the room.
Good.
I have no reason to stay here and listen to anything anybody said. And the reason is none of you have gone further than surface level. There is no why that has been answered at any point in the last half an hour. Vital is not a reason to exist. To everybody should be supporting festivals, why? Your comment, do some good, amplify voices. Why? Like, and I'm on your side. I'm not deliberately blowing up the room and not standing alongside you. What is missing in the arts is going deeper. You need to bring the 3-year-old into the room who doesn't know why the arts exists. I don't know if any of you saw Ethan Hawke. I don't know if it was a meme from this week, but Ethan Hawke on Instagram had done a meme recently all about the arts, and it might be 5 years old for all I know. The only people that are going to be able to do that is us lot, that talk about the reason in the first place why art exists. And the arts ask has never been put out there on your behalf. So I talk often in conferences about the Olympics, having had the sports, leading up to the Olympics, there was the sports ask, and it was billboarded across the UK. Everybody understood why sports needed to exist, and everybody felt that they could get involved, didn't matter what age, what size, what demographic, because they were talking about the why. And what we often do is not go as deep as we should. So if we're talking about Winchester and we're talking about it as what I can sit here as, and I often put myself in the space of a philanthropist with a massive check, and I can think, Sarah, I want to talk to you because you're really passionate. I don't know the why, but you've got enthusiasm and you've got passion. So I know by spending time with you, you're going to convince me of whatever. And the why might not be important because I'm buying you as the person and I trust you and I'm going to go with what you say. So often in terms of relationships, it can be you as an individual that they're buying into, and they just trust that what you're talking about is something that they want to buy into. But more often than not, because we write bids, and that has been the rhetoric for decades, centuries, we have been putting ourselves into that reporting space of, well, it's economy and it's place and it's space. And I want you all to start to dig deeper as to, well, why is it Winchester? And what is it about the history that's lacking, that hasn't been shown, or the community, that what's their need, and what's the change that your piece that you're putting out there as an artist on the street is going to make happen? What's the question it's asking your audience to think about? What's the space that it's in that speaks to something, and articulate that either verbally ahead of your show or in a couple of sentences in your communications or on social media. And I absolutely get that as artists sometimes you haven't gone there. Like, I've worked with a lot of artists and they haven't quite gone as far as that, to go as deep as that, to think, why have I put this on? And it comes afterwards. Even if it comes afterwards, go back and sort of say it was really interesting to hear from audience who saw my show, and it was, even if it was fun, why is fun needed right now? Well, where have we come from? Where have we been in COVID? You know, we've not been part of community, we've not been in space together, we've been wearing masks. So fun and enjoyment and creativity is required, but the arts is the sector that's doing that and bringing people together, but it's not stating that. And the other reason that artists aren't stating that is because there is a vulnerability with us as artists. There is a feeling in an artist, I think, of, am I really worthy of doing this? It's their personal piece that they're bringing, so there's all of that in there. We need to be more confident. A corporation, a company, has a mission statement because it's come together as a collective and decided we have this product, and this product is the thing that everybody needs. If, as an artist, you find it really hard to articulate your own art, then go into your community and say, when you look at my piece of art, or when you see me performing, what happens for you? What are the questions that are coming up? What are the themes that are coming up? Because I'm trying to articulate, in some form, why somebody should come and see my work, why somebody should engage with me, what benefit this has to the wider world. And if you do all of that, the next thing that I would really empower you all to do is to talk to your audiences. step away from the bids writing, step away from the reporting. And one of the things I wondered whether, and we haven't got loads of time today, but I'm more than happy to do a bit of it, is how many of you know what makes up what we call the fundraising mix? Because so often in my work, everybody's like, well, it's public funding, it's Arts Council, but they aren't aware, and they might know a bit about companies, but then, like you were saying, like, how do you approach that? The fundraising mix is a wheel, and it's made up of individuals who are your audience members, who can give you anything from £1 up. Then we've got what we call major gifts, which is high net worth individuals, and that can mean anything, and that again is a question that might be worth contemplating, is what do you guys see as rich? And I bet you've all got a different idea of that. You've then got corporates, you've then got trusts and foundations, you've then got, if you're a building, but it can also come through festivals that have been going for years, legacies. So gifts in will, which is tax deductible, so it's worth everybody putting a charity in their will because it comes out before any tax is taken. And then you've got public funding. And yet in the arts, everybody sits in that little area of public funding because it has given a huge amount. If you look at people's funding, how they've been funded, it's been a big chunk. But there's all these other areas. And the beauty is that you can meet an individual, and it's all about your data, getting hold of your data. An individual could give you £5 a month, and it might mean nothing. You look at their email address, and they work for KPMG or a major law firm. So you target them, and I mean that in the nicest possible sense. The next time they come to an event, you look out for them, and you've realised that they work for a corporate. You're not quite sure what they do. These days, on LinkedIn, you can find out. So then you meet them, and you say, we've got this performance we're putting on. We're really wanting to express what it feels like coming out of COVID. We feel people haven't really been able to share their voices around that, and we think this piece will really garner people's sorts of thoughts around that and give them an objective to sort of come and feel fierce or feel vulnerable. Or we need £5,000 to do that. We were wondering if you know of anybody, even though you know that they might be able to give you £5,000. Do you know of anybody that might be able to help us with that? They say, yeah, let's have a chat. They're giving you £5 a month. Let's say, for the sake of the speed of this conversation, this presentation, they give you £5,000. You also know they work for KPMG. So on the third point of the wheel is the corporate. Thank you so much for your £5,000. Is there any chance that as KPMG you might also be able to support our next project? They say, actually, I'll put you in touch with so-and-so in the marketing department. They might be able to sponsor something. And you've got to know them in the meantime. You've had drinks with them, and their partner sits on a trust or a foundation as a trustee. And we were also wondering if the Esme Fairbairn Foundation we realise your partner, you mentioned that she's on the trust. Yep, let me put you in touch with that. And they happen to be in their 60s, so they're looking at their will, and boom, that's one individual. I know that the atmosphere in the room might be a bit like, yeah, great in the perfect world, where's the time coming from in developing all those relationships? That is where the thought process needs to change, where you are diversifying in your working weeks and you've allowed time at midnight probably to write the bid. What about if at midnight you're thinking about how conceptually you can gain more data? How can you, in a fun way, get people to give you their email addresses? And how can you start to create, in the first instance, a database of people that you can communicate with actively, and you can see actively what backgrounds they've got from the email addresses like I just shared. And then from there, how about if you started to look at those email addresses and you saw who was corporate based and you did a small event that was targeted with corporates, and in that event you stood up and you talked about your why and your reason for being and the change that your piece or your activity is going to make, and you put an ask on an email or face-to-face off the back of that. Those would be the starters for 10, and through that you've also then, which is a separate conversation, you've got the high net worth individuals. So you start to realise that there are people out there, and just as my final bit, the biggest learning curve for me as an active face-to-face fundraiser for the last 18 years, is that people that have significant amounts of money go to wealth management companies and they're sat down and they're asked, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Let's plan that out. Let's put that, the independent financial advisor does that for them. And then they show them, and they talk as far as how many houses do you want, what yachts do you want, what children do you have, who are you responsible for. At the end they say, you have, let's say, £1.5 million that you need to give away every year for tax purposes. You actively have to, otherwise the taxman's going to take it. And that's where my role as a philanthropy advisor comes in, which isn't that big yet in the UK, outside of Coots in London, where in a perfect world I'd really love it if the IFAs then said, let me introduce you to a philanthropy advisor, because somebody like me then goes through their values as a family or as an individual. What do you value? What do you want to see change in the world? What impact do you want to make? And then goes and match makes them to sectors, to individuals. And when you hit the arts sector within that, it's huge. Because health is obvious. We all understand that. Environment is obvious. All the other sectors, it's obvious because they've articulated their meaning. And as I said at the very beginning, we need to collectively, in our own way, articulate the arts ask first, and then put your own stamp on the piece of art that you're putting out there, or the festival that you're running. And by the arts ask, I mean health, well-being, questioning, looking back to looking forward, expressing something politically. We do it all. The arts does it all, but we never ever state that when we go out to do something.